Discover the incredible courage of a janitor who inspired a CEO to stay calm during a shocking betrayal. Marcus glided through the shimmering hallways of the prestigious law firm like a ghost, his mop swishing rhythmically against the polished floors. Each stroke felt like a metaphor as he wiped away the remnants of last night's chaos, unseen by the high-powered attorneys and executives who walked past without a glance. In his late 30s, with a body worn from years of labor, he still held tight to an unyielding dream of writing, a passion ignited in silence, a spark buried beneath the layers of dust he swept away daily. However, each day reminded him of the life he had sacrificed, dropping out of high school to support his family. With each quiet moment spent polishing glass and emptying bins, he felt the weight of unfulfilled potential gnawing at him, but today, the atmosphere crackled. Word had spread about the CEO's resignation, a scandal that rippled through the glass confines of the firm. Clearly, it affected more than just the plush offices. The tension was palpable, a living thing that fluttered down the hallways. Emily, the newly appointed CEO, was grappling with her own fears while trying to focus on damage control. She paced, a bundle of nerves, her mind racing with the absurdity of being thrust into such chaos. As she passed him, Marcus couldn't help but notice the storm swirling in her eyes. That in a moment of unexpected bravery, fueled by a shared sense of vulnerability, he looked up from his work. A pause. Could he really breach the distance that seemed insurmountable? You can find strength in the oddest places. Her head snapped in his direction, brows furrowing. She had viewed him merely as the janitor, a shadow flitting past her world of law and power. Now there was a flicker of curiosity that danced in those tired eyes. This was uncharted territory, and yet, as they exchanged cautious words, Marcus felt his own barriers begin to crack. He saw parts of Emily he hadn't known existed, fear coupled with determination. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Marcus's heart raced as he shared a story from his own life, a tale of resilience riddled with trials and tribulations, a narrative that had molded him in ways no one could imagine. Each word was a shovel digging deep into the soul of the chaos around them, revealing how amidst hardship, courage could shine through. As he spoke, he saw Emily's walls lower, if only slightly, how she hung on his words, captivated. Yet, as days passed and the scandal continued to unfold, his own aspirations gnawed at him more fiercely. The media buzzed relentlessly, and he feared that his moment of connection with Emily, so precious yet fragile, would be lost in the mounting pressure. Would he remain in the shadows, or could he summon the courage to step forward, not just for her, but for himself? As he watched Emily's growing distress, he realized that he must choose: speak his truth or retreat back into the faceless anonymity of his role. The firm was crumbling around them, and with every fleeting moment, both their futures hung precariously. Would they rise to the challenge together, or be swept away in the storm of betrayal? The silence felt deafening, filled with unspoken words that could change everything. With the chaotic energy of the firm swirling around him, Marcus found himself more aware of the shivering pulse of his environment. The days grew heavier, each passing hour a weight on his shoulders as Emily dealt with her new reality. Every encounter with her during those turbulent days sparked something deep within Marcus, a growing conviction that perhaps there was something more expected of him. Determined to break free from his metaphorical chains, he picked up a pen one evening as he returned home, feverishly scribbling down thoughts that poured from his mind like water through a dam. Words danced across the page, a cathartic release bridging the gap between his untapped creativity and the man he presented to the world. His narrative began to take shape, a story draped in trials, struggles, and a yearning for something brighter, the very essence of his own life that long yearned to be told. The connection to Emily was more than mere sympathy, it was a shared understanding of leadership in the face of adversity. As the days morphed from uncertainty to tense anticipation, Marcus sent an email to her, a simple suggestion to meet and discuss not just the firm's future but their own. To his surprise, she replied quickly, her eagerness palpable even through typed words. They agreed to meet in a quiet corner of a local cafe, away from the prying eyes of the firm. When he entered the cozy establishment, he spotted her seated at a table for two, fingers tapping rhythmically on her laptop, her usually polished semblance frayed. For a brief moment, he hesitated at the threshold, grappling with the weight of his own insecurities. Could a janitor truly have something valuable to contribute to the dialogue of a leader? As he approached, her eyes flicked up, and there was an unmistakable glint of hope mixed with anxiety that mirrored his own inner turmoil. They exchanged greetings, but the air was thick with unspoken words. After some initial small talk, he took a deep breath, feeling the very fabric of the moment shift. "Emily, I've been thinking," he began, "this firm is more than just bricks and glass. It's built on people, their dreams and stories. We both have stories." A flicker of acknowledgement passed between them, and she leaned forward, intrigued. "I know I'm new to this, and everything feels like it's unraveling," she confessed, her voice steady but laden with worry. "What are you trying to say, Marcus?" Marcus steadied himself, driven by the urgency of the situation. "What if we don't just try to control the narrative? What if we create a new one together? I want to tell our stories, share what we've been through. People connect through authenticity." The intensity in Emily's eyes reflected curiosity and determination. He could see the gears turning in her mind. But would she accept that a janitor held a key to unlocking the narrative that could save the firm? "Your words matter," Emily finally replied, and for a moment, he felt a shift of validation both exhilarating and terrifying. "We need fresh perspectives to turn this around." Looking at her, he felt the enormity of his own dreams clash with the reality of their conversation. Could his humble role be just the beginning of a new journey, a chance to impact not just their lives, but those of everyone affected by the mismanagement of the firm? He had dared to dream of more than his current role, and now it felt as if those dreams were starting to crystallize into something tangible. But with each unfolding moment, questions bubbled within him. How far could he push beyond the janitor's cloak? Would he be able to handle the scrutiny that lay ahead? And as if sensing the crossroads of their lives shifting, Marcus pondered, could Emily truly be an ally in revealing a truth that lay beneath the surface of their struggles? The momentum had begun, but the road ahead presented perilous choices. As they shared ideas and visions for the firm, a place they both belonged, however differently they become aware that their collaboration could either propel them forward or drive them apart. The moment of realization lingered. He could change not only his fate but potentially reshape the firm's reality. The next morning, Marcus awoke, uncertainty wrapped around him like fog. It was time to sharpen his pen, his new purpose emerging not only as a janitor but a partner in transformation. Would he dare to fully embrace his voice and take the first step into a world armed with the power of storytelling, or would he settle back into the shadows from where he had come? The morning light filtered through the curtains, slanting across Marcus's cluttered desk, highlighting the pages of his handwritten thoughts strewn around like a forgotten tapestry. Each sheet bore witness to a burgeoning self that had long been overshadowed, yet now felt on the verge of awakening. Could this articulate expression of his ideas be a pathway to his aspirations? With determination burning in his chest, he poured a steaming cup of coffee and settled in to read his thoughts anew. It was more than words, it was an unfurling map of potential, guiding him toward clarity amid chaos. Yet the deeper he delved into his narrative, the more pressing his internal questions grew. What did it mean to be a storyteller in a world laden with whispers of authority? As he reviewed his notes, he realized that the essence of these stories didn't just belong to him, they echoed Emily's struggles and the collective heartbeat of the firm. Their lives were woven together by the threads of shared experiences, waiting to be untangled and brought into the light. This was no longer merely about personal development, it was about harnessing authenticity to reignite the firm's spirit. However, the thought of presenting this vision amidst suits and polished briefcases loomed over him, a specter of doubt. Who would listen to a janitor? Lurking insecurities gnawed at him, reminding him of the invisibility of his uniform, yet now the narrative felt like a bridge to something greater, not merely for him, but for them all. They needed a voice, a beacon to guide them through the murk of uncertainty. His phone buzzed, an early morning message from Emily. "Can we meet again? I've been thinking about what you said." Excitement coursed through him, mingling with anxiety. Would this conversation yield a roadmap or simply deepen the chasm that separation threatened to widen? Igniting change was rarely simple, and the stakes felt monumental. He replied quickly, suggesting they meet again later that day. As the morning progressed, Marcus mulled over his insecurities. Would his ideas resonate with Emily? He felt compelled to prepare, to articulate his thoughts with precision and purpose. He drafted an outline, utilizing not just his creative inclinations but delving into his observations, his insights from the hours spent cleaning the very spaces where the firm's ambitions thrived. Scrubbing floors had ennobled his perspective, giving him an eye for detail that many leaders failed to notice. The weight of his potential was palpable. He understood the nuances of the firm, the unspoken fears, the flickering hopes, the tales behind every corner. What if this knowledge was his strength? What if his experiences and the hurdles he had faced could form a narrative that not only spoke to Emily but also inspired the entire firm? His determination veered into a full-blown certainty. He would harness his voice. The sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the world outside with a golden hue, a juxtaposition to Marcus's internal storm. As he donned his uniform, a symbol of the life he had led, something shifted within him. Instead of masking his identity, he felt an unexpected pride in his work, his journey, his purpose. When he arrived at the cafe, a sense of resolve gripped him. He entered with a newfound clarity. This meeting was pivotal. It was about more than sharing concepts, it was about transforming their realities, turning narrative into action. Upon seeing Emily, her anxious smile mirrored his own internal struggle, blending fear and anticipation. "Marcus," she greeted, the warmth in her voice igniting his resolve anew. Before he could second-guess himself, he spoke with conviction. "I believe we can change the narrative. I want to help tell the stories of everyone here, to empower their voices." Her eyes widened, a flicker of recognition crossing her features. "Stories are powerful, Marcus, especially now. But how do we set this in motion?" The question hung between them, charged with possibility. As they began to strategize, Marcus felt the adrenaline of the unknown coursing through him. It was not just about sharing their story, it was about taking a stand, about redefining who they were against the backdrop of their struggles. Yet as he prepared to delve deeper, a creeping trepidation settled in. The world would not be ready to hear every story. Resistance lay ahead, and Marcus wondered how they would navigate it, who would oppose them in their quest for authenticity. The path to transformation was fraught with challenges. Would standing against the tide lead to empowerment, or isolation? The moment of truth was near. They would have to confront the established narrative head-on together. But would they have the courage to face those who might resist their authentic voices? His heart raced as the stakes intensified, and with every passing second, the urgency to act sharpened, beckoning them farther into an uncertain future. As the coffee shop hummed with the bustle of morning patrons, Marcus felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him like the warm sunlight filtering through the large windows. He and Emily had temporarily carved out a makeshift sanctuary where ideas could roam free, but now the pressure to turn those ideas into action felt almost suffocating. He could see the reflection of ambition in Emily's eyes, but alongside it lay the heaviness of apprehension, mirrored in his own heart. "Let us break this down," Emily said, pulling a napkin toward her as if it were a blank canvas awaiting the strokes of a brush. "We need a plan that's actionable. Otherwise, our thoughts risk remaining just whispers." Her urgency ignited something within him. His mind spiraled through complexities. The fire inside him hadn't originated in a dream, it blossomed in the mundane, during moments spent amidst the polished floors and muted conversations of the office. He gestured to his notes, scrolling through the essence of everyone's stories he had compiled. "What if we start with an internal presentation? Something that combines each of their experiences, your insights, our narrative with their realities," he proposed, struggling to formulate the words that felt as slippery as oil. What if people resist? Emily replied, her brow furrowing. Resistance is natural, right? Doesn't that mean the story is worth telling? A shiver ran through him as he uttered those words, confronting the raw truth that lay buried within his own hesitations. Were they ready for pushback? Would he stand tall under the scrutiny of critics who would dismiss him as nothing more than a janitor? Emily's gaze held his, an unspoken encouragement flickering just beneath the surface. The spark of doubt smoldered in the background, but he refused to give it voice. Instead, he rallied against it, pushing forth with clarity. We will share not only the stories of struggle but also the tales of triumph. It's their resilience that could redefine us. Yes, she exclaimed, her enthusiasm palpable. But it also means we must confront our own fears head-on. We can't just scatter these voices about, we need to foster an environment where everyone feels they have the right to share. The insight struck Marcus deeply, jolting him into another layer of urgency. Paradoxically, fear and hope interwove tightly within his core. If they would anchor themselves in vulnerability, they could transcend mere existence within the shadows of anonymity, they could become a beacon of authenticity. Yet, that authenticity was the very thing that could draw both allies and antagonists. How could they reciprocate that weight while remaining strong? Spurred by newfound determination, Marcus felt compelled to challenge the current narrative, ready to assert himself. Words now flowed easier, the threads of ideas interlacing seamlessly. He shared tales of fellow employees who embodied resilience, collision of artistic talent amidst corporate rigidity. This wasn't merely about him or Emily, it was about every overlooked presence in the building. Emily's eyes glittered, her aspirations swelling into possibilities. But Marcus, she suddenly cut in, her tone stern yet nurturing, it's not just speaking, it's how we frame this. We have to be strategic. There are those who won't take kindly to our approach. As doubt trailed back into her voice, Marcus sensed an opportunity to fortify their stance. So then we need allies, people who will support this drive. What if we tap resources where others don't expect us to? What if someone with authority sees this not as a challenge but a growth opportunity? He paused, startled by the sudden bloom of ideas sprouting within him. Could they break down the walls, even if it was just a crack? The prospect was exhilarating. Suddenly, moments of cleaning the corridors flooded back to him, each confidential whisper caught, every flicker of ambition noticed. Would they uncover beneath the surface uncomfortable truths? What fears would rise? The gnawing vagueness around such confrontations haunted him, and yet, there was a rhythm to their conversation now, a push towards something monumental. Let us reconvene with those we trust, he finally concluded, emboldened. We can make this a collaborative effort. Emily nodded, a smile breaking onto her face, a sign of shared endeavor, an omen of potential transformation. Still, as they agreed on their next steps, he couldn't shake the looming uncertainty. Would their vulnerability invite bravery, or would it draw vicious resistance from the polished towers they dared to challenge? The tension thrummed around him as they locked hands, pledging their commitment to each story waiting to be told, each voice thirsting for validation. He felt the ground shifting under him, the promise of change stirring. Tomorrow would come, and with it, the real confrontation would begin. Would he and Emily be ready to face the fallout, the repercussions of their shared ambition? Marcus wondered, not only for himself but for everyone craving recognition. The moment of truth awaited them, sharper than ever. The morning air was a frigid contrast to the warmth of the coffee shop, but Marcus couldn't shake the chill running down his spine. The weight of their plans loomed larger now, as he and Emily sat at a table amidst the hum of idle chatter and clattering dishes. Today, their ambition required execution, and that realization threatened to halt the vibrant energy they had cultivated over countless brainstorming sessions. Let us break down who we can reach first, Emily suggested, tapping ever so gently on the napkin. It felt like the first strike in a game of chess, each move critical, each decision leading toward an outcome fraught with tension. Through racing thoughts, Marcus replayed their conversation from yesterday, honing in on the various allies lurking within the shadows of their organization. Perhaps it was time to challenge the silent observers, the company's overlooked supporters who bore witness to the stories of resilience they wanted to amplify. Maybe we start with the reception team, he ventured carefully, recalling their friendly banter whenever he passed through the front lobby. They engage with everyone. If we can get them on board, they'll elevate our efforts. Emily raised an eyebrow. Good idea. The way they interact could bring us closer to the rest of the staff. But we have to be tactful, they might be wary of getting involved in something perceived as a challenge to the status quo. The deeper Marcus delved into their strategy, the more layers of complexity unfurled. Were they equipped to navigate such a landscape? Fear of disapproval filled the air between them. How could they ensure their message resonated with others who might feel as hesitant as he did? I think we need to have those conversations, just to test the waters, he proposed, a flicker of urgency ignited within him. The more feedback we gather now, the better we can fine-tune our approach later. Otherwise, we may overestimate or underestimate people's support. True, Emily agreed. Make it a series of informal chats. A casual lunch here or a quick coffee break there. It allows them to share without feeling pressured. Their newfound strategy blossomed, but with it came the specter of intimidation. Marcus considered the vulnerabilities they were laying bare. Would opening up these discussions invite scrutiny instead of understanding? A nervous lump formed in his throat at the thought of exposing their collaborative ambition to potential mockery. Do you think, he began hesitantly, that someone might lash out against us once we start putting our ideas into the open? I mean, if some folks feel threatened, it might result in negativity. Emily's eyes met his, fortifying him against the tide of doubt. That's a risk we have to embrace, Marcus. Change doesn't come without its challenges. But telling our story is our way of showing it's possible to grow from adversity. The affirmations swirled within him like a tempest. He felt alive in a new way, unearthing skills he hadn't realized were dormant. Small as it may seem, this was their first step into the unknown, a dance of vulnerability and tenacity. For too long, they had remained segments on the periphery of their company's narrative. Now, they might seize the spotlight, if only for a moment. Then let us set those meetings, he asserted, nearly surprising himself with his own conviction. Let us lay the groundwork for a culture shift, one voice at a time. As their plans solidified, an intoxicating sense of purpose flooded Marcus, a tangible anticipation sparking his nerves. He imagined a ripple effect moving through the organization, amplifying not just their stories, but those of everyone who had ever felt stifled by silence. Yet a nagging thought remained: would their courage to confront their fears ultimately draw out the antagonists lurking within the walls they sought to crack? Marcus couldn't quell the sense of foreboding that tingled in his veins. The hours trudged on, leading him deeper into a labyrinth of contemplation. Would he soon find himself facing the consequences of their bold actions? The path they had chosen swirled with uncertainty, but what awaited him on the other side? Gripping the edge of the table, Marcus felt the intensity of his resolve bolster against the uncertainty that he glanced at the door, a swift urge to step forward rattling through him. In those moments of revelation, he knew he teetered on the edge. The audacity to write his own story was within reach. The stakes were rising, and as the clock ticked toward the next day, he embraced an exhilarating thought: could he finally carve out a place where his voice, like a strand of resilience woven into the fabric of their workplace, would echo beyond the constraints of quiet ambition? But just as excitement built, an unsettling thought emerged: how far would he be willing to go to defend that newfound space? The sun had barely risen, but Marcus was already pacing his small apartment, fueled by a cocktail of caffeine and anxiety. Each step on the worn floorboards echoed a silent prayer to the universe, urging him to muster the resolve necessary for the conversations ahead. The gravity of their mission weighed heavy on his shoulders, an unrelenting reminder of what was at stake. Today was different. The conversations with the reception team could either be the catalyst for their dream or an audacious misstep that could dismantle everything. As he poured a fresh cup of coffee, the steam mingled with the lingering scent of uncertainty that filled his mind. Just be yourself, he murmured to his reflection in the kitchen window, attempting to cultivate the confidence that had eluded him through past challenges. He may have spent years feeling like an observer in his own life, but now, a flicker of determination was igniting within him. As he entered the office, the hum of normalcy enveloped him. The clattering keyboards and faint chatter filled the air, yet it felt distant, like a world separated from his own turbulent thoughts. He spotted Emily at their usual table in the break room, her fingers tapping nervously against a well-worn notebook, the inked pages brimming with their ideas and strategies. "Ready?" she asked, her gaze piercing through the fog of his uncertainty. The warmth in her voice wrapped around him like armor, bolstering his resolve. "More than ever," he replied, though the linger of doubt still lurked at the edges of his thoughts. They began their rounds, moving from one desk to another, each informal chat no more than a brief interlude amidst the daily grind. Marcus shared stories of struggle and resilience, his voice wavering yet steady as he angled for authenticity. This personal touch was lost on their colleagues, who leaned closer, intrigued by the rawness of his narrative. A subtle shift occurred. They began to open up about their own experiences, echoing sentiments of aspiration with palpable vulnerability, but just as he felt the warmth of connection forming, a chilling reminder interrupted his epiphany. He could still feel the shadow of those who would be resistant to change. What if one careless word pierced through, igniting dissent rather than support? That fear clawed at the edges of Marcus's mind, anchoring him in a morass of self-doubt. He watched as Angela, a disenchanted team lead, meandered through the lunch crowd, the very embodiment of the pervasive cynicism he dreaded. The last thing he needed was a confrontation that could unravel the fragile threads of trust he was beginning to weave. "Do you think it's wise to approach Angela?" he whispered to Emily, his heart racing. "She's been on the fence for too long. If anyone can reach her, it's us." Her assurance radiated confidence that he longed to embody himself. Marcus took a deep breath, like drawing buoyancy from the sea of concern that encircled him. Calculating the risk, he decided it was time to confront the impending challenge. As they approached Angela, Marcus felt the weight of a daunting task. Standing at the crossroads of fear and resolve, he raised his voice above the tumult of the break room. "Angela, do you have a moment? We're working on something we believe could really benefit everyone here." He locked eyes with her, a tempest of apprehension swirling within, but also a deeper understanding of the necessity behind their initiative. "I don't think anyone wants to listen to a sales pitch right now," she replied coolly, crossing her arms. The barrier was constructed, yet the thrill of personal challenge surged within him. "Not a pitch, just a conversation. We're asking people to share their stories, their truths," Marcus countered, crafting his words with care, feeling the waves of possibility collide with doubt. As their exchange unfolded, a murmur of other colleagues formed a subtle sphere of attention, drawing in fragments of conversation. Would they witness Marcus bravely navigating the pushback, or would the pent-up tension break him? Apart, the atmosphere thickened, and with every moment, Marcus sensed the gravity of his role amplifying. Now, standing on the precipice of confrontation, he had to ask himself the critical question that loomed larger than any other: what did he truly risk losing if he chose to stand firm in his beliefs against the headwinds of discontent? This reckoning coursed through him, igniting embers of realization that perhaps the defining moment of his journey was just beginning, but the question remained: would he confront his own fears, or would the shadows of skepticism pull him back into silence? The weight of silence hung heavy as Marcus stood toe-to-toe with Angela, her expression reminiscent of stone. Struggling to maintain his composure, he felt as if he were careening through a fog of uncertainty. Behind him, he sensed Emily's supportive presence, but outwardly, all that mattered was this moment. "I understand if you're skeptical," he began again, trying to steady his voice. "Change is difficult. But what we're working on isn't about sales, it's about creating a space where everyone really feels heard." Angela's brow furrowed, her skepticism manifesting as an impenetrable wall. "And what's in it for us? Why should we even bother?" The question cut deeper than he anticipated. He steeled himself. This wasn't just her challenge, it was his. "Because we have something to gain. A shared vision could energize this team. It's a chance to commit to something bigger than ourselves." Her lips curled in a sardonic smile, and Marcus immediately knew he'd need to pivot. I know you've faced frustration in your role, and you've seen how things can get stagnant. But this is a chance to shift that narrative. He realized he was tapping into something raw and real, perhaps the very complexity that paralyzed him. Her eyes softened, if only for a fraction. You really think sharing our stories is going to fix everything? That's naive, she challenged, but her tone lacked its previous bite. Maybe. But it's a start, he replied, his voice firm yet inviting. We've each faced hardships, and that shared vulnerability can forge understanding. Isn't that worth something? A flicker of contemplation crossed her face. That mere crack in her armor stirred hope within him. He thought about how he had often felt invisible, a spectator in life's grand performance. Today, however, he recognized he had the power to influence the narrative not just for himself, but for everyone else too. As nearby colleagues tuned in, Marcus realized he had inadvertently become a catalyst for broader discourse, amplifying vulnerability that resonated across the room. He could feel the pulse of empathy bleeding into the atmosphere, the caution slipping away. But what if it doesn't work? Angela pressed, her facade wavering. That's part of the risk, he admitted, which struck him. But what if it works better than we could ever imagine? What if we finally see the change we've all felt was possible? The challenge of embracing failure suddenly transformed into an exhilarating opportunity. It was reminiscent of the fear he carried into the office this morning, dread transforming into a calculated risk, one that stripped him of crutches and allowed for unfiltered authenticity. To keep pushing for connection amidst doubt felt liberating. This realization reverberated inside him, igniting his resolve. If he could keep standing, perhaps others would too. All right, Angela finally relented, arms uncrossing, her skepticism eclipsed by a hint of curiosity. You've got my attention. Show me what you have in mind. Marcus's heart surged, the tide of uncertainty receding. Courage could ripple from this small victory. As they began to frame new conversations, he could almost visualize an open beach rather than a tumultuous sea, possibilities stretching as far as the horizon. Yet, after the promise of this first step, an unsettling thought loomed in Marcus's mind. What would happen if the tides turned against them? What if their open discussions unveiled deeper fractures within the team? Would he be prepared to navigate those stormy waters? As he contemplated the hurdles still ahead, he could feel the sweet thrill of discovery. This was only the beginning. Would he hold on to his convictions amid increasing pressures, or would the tides of doubt sweep him back into uncertainty once again? The next week unfolded with a sense of urgency, each day posing fresh challenges and inviting the untested growth that Marcus had only recently begun to embrace. As he entered the office, the air thickened with a blend of trepidation and anticipation. He had another meeting planned with Angela and the team, and he felt the weight of responsibility settle heavy on his shoulders. His heart raced in the quiet moments before the meeting. Sitting at the long conference table, he surveyed the faces of his colleagues, each one reflecting their own reservations and hopes. Today was the day they would try something new, a roundtable discussion where everyone would share a significant personal story. It was an exercise designed to foster understanding, yet Marcus wondered if it was naive to believe such revelations could dismantle barriers formed over years. As he began to speak, he grappled with a knot of insecurity. Would his words resonate? Could they cultivate the empathy he desperately wished to inspire? Today, we're going to share experiences that have shaped us, he declared, his voice firm. These stories aren't just ours, they reflect the tapestry of our team. He started the discussion with vulnerability, recounting a moment from his childhood when he felt invisible, lost in a sea of noise. As he spoke, he could see the glimmer of recognition in some eyes and understanding that they too had been overlooked. With each story shared, Angela's struggles as a single mother balancing work and home, Emily's battles with self-doubt. Marcus felt the atmosphere shift. The room that had previously felt sterile began to hum with connection, but as the stories flowed, he faced an unsettling reality. Not every story was smooth, nor were all responses as warm. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and even defensiveness. The fragile threads of empathy began to fray when a conflict arose over differing perspectives on work-life balance. In that moment, a familiar tide of uncertainty began to wash over him. Why should we even care? One colleague challenged, arms crossed. We're all just trying to do our jobs here. Marcus's heart sank, the fear that had lurked in the background surfacing again. He knew he had to act, to maintain the fragile construct they'd begun to build. Drawing on a burgeoning resilience, he took a calm breath. What if I told you that empathy can lead to better collaboration? To understanding what drives each of us? As he spoke, he felt a flicker of something within himself, confidence igniting in response to those doubts. In that moment, he understood, it wasn't about forcing a consensus, it was about making space for every voice to be valid, even when they clashed. The conversation continued, punctuated by moments of tension and flickers of revelation. It was messy and human, a dynamic exchange that reminded him of the emotional complexities he had long neglected. For every inch they gained in connection, there seemed to be an equal pushback from ingrained behaviors. Yet, what mattered was not the outcome but the act of trying. His initial fears of inadequacy began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose. Each interaction reaffirmed his belief in their potential, which bolstered his confidence to take risks. He was no longer simply standing against the tide, he was learning to navigate its currents. As the meeting concluded, Angela approached him with a cautious smile. You held your ground well, Marcus, she acknowledged. But I see this is far from over. The real challenge lies ahead. Marcus felt a spark of apprehension at her words. He understood that the ripple effect of their discussions could lead to deeper fractures if not managed carefully. As he walked away, the nagging thought persisted: how would he foster this fragile bond when the next storm of disagreement inevitably arrived? The taste of growth was both exhilarating and daunting. What lay ahead felt substantial, the currents of change swirling around him just waiting for the moment to unleash their full force. Would he be ready to ride those waves, or would they pull him under? Marcus entered the office the following week with a new resolve, yet the familiar knot of anxiety twisted within him at the memory of the tumultuous meeting. Although the stories had sparked connections, he knew unresolved tensions lingered, threatening to sabotage their progress. He had taken a step forward but now stood atop precarious ground. As he settled into his cubicle, he caught sight of Angela. Her expression was serious, yet a flicker of encouragement shone behind her eyes. You know, some resistance is expected in change, she had told him after the meeting. They'll need guidance to navigate through those rough waters. Her words echoed in his mind as he prepared for the team's next round of discussions. This time, instead of sharing personal stories, they would tackle a pressing project that had been on the back burner for months. The stakes were high, success hinged on collaboration, yet Marcus felt a shadow of apprehension stalk him. Could he lead the team to engage positively when their past differences surfaced like splintered glass? Taking a breath, he entered the conference room, determined to infuse a sense of collaboration into the proceedings. The room was stark, the chatter subdued. Marcus glanced around, noting the hesitant faces, the lingering divisions. Today, we're focusing on our upcoming project, he announced, his voice steadier than he felt. But rather than just discussing tasks, let us brainstorm ideas openly, valuing every contribution. He sensed skepticism, yet also curiosity. The challenge was twofold: conveying the urgency of the project while dismantling the barriers that hindered authentic dialogue. As they began discussing project plans, a well of ideas bubbled up amidst the inevitable squabbles. Emily proposed an innovative approach to customer outreach, but immediately faced pushback from Jason, who felt her suggestions were impractical. Marcus's heart sank. He recognized that familiar tension rising again. Emily, could you elaborate on your idea? Marcus interjected, his tone inviting yet firm. And Jason, I'd love to hear your concerns after Emily expands on her proposal. He interlaced their dialogue with pauses, giving space for listening, fostering respect. He realized he was no longer simply facilitating, he was cultivating an environment for growth. When Jason articulated his concerns, it revealed not just a critique of Emily's proposal but illuminated a deeper fear of being sidelined in decision-making. Encouraged by this insight, Marcus pivoted the conversation. What if we integrated both perspectives? Emily's creativity combined with practical constraints that Jason highlights. The room grew still. Their responses began to shift. Marcus could see the walls soften as they considered each other's viewpoints instead of solidifying their defenses. He felt a sense of exhilaration blooming within him, a confidence in his role that was blossoming. He never expected that navigating conflict could be as illuminating as forging connections. Still, with every small success, a new tension began to bubble beneath the surface. A sense of unease crept in, a nagging worry about the authenticity of these exchanges. Were they merely putting on a show for Marcus? Or was something genuine forming in the spaces between their dialogue? As the meeting wrapped up, he was struck by an unsettling thought. Would these tentative bonds weather future challenges, or would the friction re-emerge stronger than before? The lingering doubts threatened to eclipse the progress made. Later that day, Angela pulled him aside. You're discovering your strength, Marcus, but don't forget to keep challenging yourself. Engage with your critics, and don't shy away from confrontation. It's in those hardened places that growth can truly take root. Marcus nodded, understanding that her words were a call to action. He must anchor himself in courage to face forthcoming strife if he wanted to steer the team's ship through turbulent waters. Would he let these small victories shape his leadership, or would he falter in the face of adversity they had yet to encounter? The days ahead would test him profoundly. Would he embrace the lessons learned, or shy away from the impending storms on the horizon? The following week dawned with a promise of change. Marcus stood in front of his mirror, the morning light defining the sharp lines of his determined face. What had started as a flicker of courage within him had transformed into an undeniable fire. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. No longer just the janitor, but a voice, a catalyst. Today, he and Emily would present their plan to the larger team, seeking a collective commitment to their new narrative. The stakes felt monumental, the weight of the firm's future resting on the strength of their stories. As he entered the conference room, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation and lingering tension. Colleagues shuffled nervously in their seats, glancing at one another, unsure of their collective resolve. Marcus saw Angela, her expression a blend of skepticism and cautious hope. He could read her anxiety, uncertainty mirrored in others, yet he knew this was their moment to redefine the narrative. Standing alongside Emily, he felt a surge of pride in the transformation they had begun, a shift from isolation to connection, from shadows to light. Good morning, everyone, Marcus began, his voice steady as he captivated the room's attention. We're here today to share not just our ideas, but our stories. These stories matter. They are the heartbeat of who we are as a team. He launched into their vision a discussion that fused authenticity and collective experience. He shared personal encounters, moments of vulnerability, and the triumphs that embodied their journey. With every word, he could see their perceptions shift, acknowledging not just his transformation but the potency of his message. Emily took the stage, articulating the framework Marcus had envisioned. Our goal isn't simply improvement, it's a deep commitment to understanding one another. We'll create spaces where every voice can articulate its truth. Her passion reverberated through the room, invigorating their intents, yet, despite the rising tide of hope, an unmistakable backlash surged from Jason, who had grown increasingly reluctant to embrace their approach. This sounds great on paper, he said, arms crossed defiantly, but do you really think this will change anything? What if we fail? The room fell silent as the tension churned. Marcus felt a rush of empathy for Jason, understanding the fear masked by his cynicism. Failure is part of growth, he interjected, meeting Jason's gaze. But what if we view these stories and this change as a stronger foundation instead of a burden? Encouraged by the exchange, the dialogue began to weave. Stories met resistance, but respect fostered understanding. Together, they articulated their struggles as a team and, gradually, the apprehension in the room began to dissipate, unveiling an unexpected solidarity. By the end of the meeting, it felt as though possibilities blossomed, and Marcus stood taller, no longer burdened by doubt. The conversations had opened doors, sparking connections he had never expected among the team members who had once remained distant. As the session concluded, he felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Marcus, that was impressive," Angela remarked as many filed out. "You took the possibility of pushback and turned it into a conversation. This is the kind of leadership I hope to see." His heart swelled at her words, each acknowledgement reinforcing his belief in his abilities. They were more than colleagues now, they were partners in transformation. In the days that followed, Marcus embraced his newfound role further, each day reinforcing his competence. He felt unshackled from the limitations he had once imposed on himself. He began writing, weaving the stories of his colleagues into a narrative that not only empowered his own journey but also amplified the voices around him. He documented their trials, their resilience, and, most importantly, their triumphs, shaping a tapestry of lived experiences to present at a company-wide meeting. When that day arrived, the conference room overflowed, filled with energy and anticipation. Marcus stood at the front, a presenter now, not just a janitor. The faces reflected recognition and curiosity, and he felt the whispers of doubt fade into the background. "This is our narrative," he said, drawing in a breath filled with appreciation for every person in the room. "Let us own it together." Reinforced by the power of vulnerability, he narrated the collection of stories that spoke volumes of the spirit within the firm. Emotion surged in the room, barriers crumbled as colleagues began sharing their own reflections, some emotional and raw. They were no longer just participants, they were a community forged by the fire of candidness and trust. Accountability echoed, punctuated by laughter and tears alike. As the presentation ended, a deafening applause erupted. Colleagues clapped not just for Marcus, but for themselves, every person who had chosen to join this journey of authenticity. In that moment, he realized his metamorphosis was complete. He had transitioned from the janitor to a storyteller, a leader, and finally, someone who had truly found his voice. As he walked off the stage, confidence rippling in his chest, he felt a weight lift. This was fulfillment, this was the impact he had yearned for. The firm was alight with a language of aspirations, united by their stories. And as he stepped into that new territory, Marcus understood that it was not just about telling the stories. He had demonstrated that within each of them lay the capacity to spark true change. Now, the call to action resonated within him. It was time to continue sharing their narrative, to embody progress, and truly inspire one another, for the future was not something to fear but a canvas to paint together. So, now I urge you, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others find their way to courage. Comment below your reactions and theories about how Marcus's journey unfolds from here. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to help someone discover the incredible strength within their own stories.